The security guard almost stopped her at the door. At 73 years old, Dorothy Mae Jenkins looked nothing like the typical contestant walking into America's biggest talent show audition, but what happened next would become the most-watched audition video in the show's history. Born in rural Tennessee in 1950, Dorothy Mae grew up in a world where dreams were luxuries poor families couldn't afford. Her father, William Jenkins, worked double shifts at the local steel mill, his hands permanently stained black from grease and metal shavings. Her mother, Betty, took in laundry from the wealthier families across town, her fingers raw from scrubbing other people's clothes in their tiny kitchen sink. But here's what nobody knew about little Dorothy Mae. She had a gift that defied explanation. When she hummed while helping her mother hang clothes on the line, birds would actually stop singing to listen. When she sang quietly to herself while walking to school, neighbors would crack open their windows just to catch a few notes. Her voice was like liquid gold, pure and haunting, with a quality that seemed to reach directly into your soul. The first person to truly notice was Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, her third-grade teacher at Oakwood Elementary. During a simple classroom sing-along, Mrs. Patterson's hands froze on the piano keys when Dorothy Mae's voice rose above the children's choir. After class, she pulled the shy 8-year-old aside. "Child, that voice of yours is special. Really special. You could sing professionally someday." Dorothy Mae's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. For weeks, she carried those words like a precious secret, humming with new confidence, imagining herself on stages she'd only seen in magazines. She started staying after school, and Mrs. Patterson began giving her informal voice lessons, teaching her proper breathing techniques and simple scales. But dreams in Dorothy Mae's world were fragile things. When her father lost his job at the steel mill that winter, everything changed overnight. The family could barely afford food, let alone music lessons or dreams of stardom. When Dorothy Mae timidly mentioned Mrs. Patterson's suggestion about voice training, her father's reaction was swift and crushing. "Music don't put food on the table, girl. You better focus on learning something useful." At 15, Dorothy Mae was pulled out of school to work at Henderson's Five and Dime, counting inventory and stocking shelves for 50 cents an hour. Her voice became something she saved for the shower or late-night lullabies when she thought everyone was asleep. The dream flickered but never quite died. It just went underground, buried beneath layers of responsibility and practicality. At 19, she married Robert Sullivan, a kind but practical man who worked at the local lumber yard. "You've got a pretty voice, honey," he'd say when she sang while cooking dinner. "But we've got bills to pay." Soon came children. First Tommy, then Sarah, then little Michael. Dorothy Mae poured all her musical dreams into lullabies for her babies, her voice the soundtrack to bedtime stories and scrape-knee comfort sessions. The years rolled by like pages in a book she was too busy to read. Tommy grew up and joined the military. Sarah became a teacher and moved to California. Michael started his own construction business. Robert developed heart problems in his 60s, and Dorothy Mae spent her days caring for him, her voice now mainly reserved for humming hymns while she folded his medications into weekly pill containers. When Robert passed away at 68, Dorothy Mae felt like a part of her soul had been amputated. At 70, she was alone for the first time in her adult life, rattling around in their small house in Murfreesboro, unsure of who she was when she wasn't being somebody's wife or mother. It was during one of those long, quiet evenings that she found the old shoebox in the back of her closet. Inside, yellowed with age, was a program from her high school's talent show, a show she'd been too scared to enter. At the bottom of the box was a faded photograph of Mrs. Patterson, with a note written on the back in her teacher's careful handwriting. "For Dorothy Mae, your voice is a gift to the world. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." That night, something shifted inside Dorothy Mae. She sat at Robert's old piano, the one they'd bought for the kids but hardly anyone ever played, and for the first time in decades, she really sang. Not humming while doing chores, not quiet lullabies, but full-voiced, soul-deep singing that filled every corner of that empty house. The next morning, she did something that would have terrified her younger self. She called the community center and signed up for their senior talent showcase. When the day came, Dorothy Mae wore her best church dress, a simple navy blue number that she'd owned for 15 years, and walked onto that small stage with her hands shaking like leaves in a storm. There were maybe 40 people in the audience, mostly other seniors and their families. But when Dorothy Mae opened her mouth and sang Amazing Grace, something magical happened. The room went completely silent. An elderly man in the front row started crying. By the time she reached the final note, the entire audience was on their feet, applauding like she'd just performed at Carnegie Hall. After the show, a woman named Patricia Adams approached her. Patricia ran a local charity that organized performances at nursing homes and community events. Dorothy Mae, that was extraordinary. Would you consider joining our volunteer performance group? For the next 2 years, Dorothy Mae sang at nursing homes, church gatherings, and community festivals throughout Middle Tennessee. Every performance was a revelation, not just for her audiences, but for Dorothy Mae herself. She was discovering that the woman she'd always been was still there, just waiting to be uncovered. But here's where Dorothy Mae's story takes an unexpected turn. During a performance at Sunrise Manor Nursing Home, she met Janet Richardson, a former music producer from Nashville who was visiting her mother. Janet had worked with some of country music's biggest names before retiring, and she recognized something special when she heard it. "Honey, I've been in this business for 40 years, and I've never heard anything like your voice. Natural, pure, authentic, everything that's missing from music today." Janet became Dorothy Mae's unofficial manager and biggest cheerleader. She helped her make a simple recording on Janet's old equipment, just Dorothy Mae's voice and a piano. When they played it for Janet's former colleagues in Nashville, the reaction was unanimous. This was something extraordinary. "You need to audition for America's Voice," Janet insisted, referring to the nation's biggest talent competition. "The world needs to hear this." Dorothy Mae's first reaction was laughter. At 73, competing against 20-somethings with perfect teeth and professional training? It seemed ridiculous. But Janet was persistent, and deep down, Dorothy Mae felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: possibility. The audition was held in Atlanta, a 4-hour drive from Murfreesboro. Dorothy Mae's daughter Sarah flew in from California to drive her, though she made her concerns clear. "Mom, are you sure about this? These shows can be cruel. What if they make fun of you on national television?" But Dorothy Mae had made up her mind. She'd spent 50 years wondering, what if? And she wasn't going to spend whatever years she had left doing the same thing. The waiting room at the audition venue was exactly what you'd expect. Hundreds of hopefuls ranging in age from 16 to 30-something, most dressed in flashy outfits designed to grab attention. When Dorothy Mae walked in wearing her simple floral dress and carrying a small purse that had seen better days, she felt every eye in the room assess and dismiss her in seconds. A group of 20-year-old girls near the registration table made no effort to hide their amusement. "Oh my God, is that someone's grandmother?" one of them whispered, loud enough for Dorothy Mae to hear. "This is embarrassing." Dorothy Mae's cheeks burned with familiar shame. For a moment, she almost turned around and walked out. But then she remembered Mrs. Patterson's words, written on that faded photograph, and she straightened her shoulders and got in line. The production assistants were polite, but clearly puzzled by her presence. "Ma'am, are you here with one of the contestants?" a young man with a clipboard asked. "I am a contestant," Dorothy Mae replied quietly. When her number was finally called, Dorothy Mae walked onto that stage carrying more than just her dreams. She was carrying 50 years of silence, decades of what-ifs, and a lifetime of being told that some dreams have expiration dates. The 4 judges, Marcus Thompson, a Grammy-winning R&B artist, Jennifer Walsh, a pop superstar, David Chun, a classical composer, and Rita Gonzalez, a country music legend, looked up from their notes with expressions ranging from confusion to barely concealed amusement. "Well, this is unexpected," Marcus said, not unkindly but with obvious skepticism. "What's your name, and what are you going to sing for us today?" "I'm Dorothy Mae Jenkins from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I'm going to sing Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen." Jennifer Walsh exchanged a glance with David Chun. Rita Gonzalez leaned back in her chair with a bemused expression. The song choice was ambitious. Hallelujah had been performed by countless professionals and was notoriously difficult to interpret with authenticity. "All right, Dorothy Mae," Marcus said. "The stage is yours." Dorothy Mae closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and in that moment, 50 years of silence ended. The first word, "I've," came out with such pure, crystalline clarity that Marcus Thompson's pen stopped moving across his notepad. "I heard there was a secret chord." Jennifer Walsh's phone had been forgotten on the judge's table. When Dorothy Mae reached that "Please the Lord," David Chun was leaning forward like a man witnessing something impossible. But it wasn't just the technical perfection of her voice, though that was undeniable. It was the depth of emotion, the lived-in pain and joy that colored every word. When she sang about the broken hallelujah, you could hear every heartbreak, every loss, every moment of doubt she'd ever experienced. And when she sang about faith and love enduring, you could hear the strength it had taken to stand on that stage at 73. By the time she reached the final hallelujah, Rita Gonzalez was crying openly. The entire auditorium, production crew, cameras operators, other contestants watching from the wings, had gone completely silent except for Dorothy Mae's voice filling every corner of that vast space. When the last note faded, the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Marcus Thompson stood up, followed immediately by the other 3 judges, and began applauding. Within seconds, everyone in that auditorium was on their feet, many wiping tears from their eyes. "In 30 years of judging talent competitions," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "I have never, ever heard anything like that. Dorothy Mae, where have you been hiding?" Dorothy Mae smiled through her own tears. "I wasn't hiding. I was just living. But I'm not done yet." The judges voted unanimously to send her to the next round, but more than that, her audition video became a viral sensation within hours of being posted. #Dorothy Mae Voice trended worldwide. News outlets from CNN to BBC picked up her story. Messages poured in from around the globe, from teenagers to seniors, all sharing their own stories of dreams deferred and finding the courage to try again. Dorothy Mae went on to finish 3rd in the competition, but in many ways, she'd already won something far more valuable than a recording contract. She'd proven that authenticity trumps youth, that life experience can create artistry no amount of training can replicate, and that it's never too late to become the person you were always meant to be. Today, at 75, Dorothy Mae tours the country performing at venues from small-town churches to major concert halls. She's recorded 2 albums, with profits going to music education programs for underprivileged children. But more importantly, she's become a symbol of hope for anyone who's ever been told they're too old, too late, too different to chase their dreams. Her message is simple but revolutionary. Your dreams don't expire. Your talents don't have expiration dates. And the world needs exactly what you have to offer, not despite your age or experience, but because of it. Dorothy Mae Jenkins walked onto that stage as an invisible 73-year-old grandmother. She walked off as proof that the most powerful voices are often the ones that have been waiting the longest to be heard. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes not from perfect technique or youth, but from a heart that has lived long enough to understand what the songs really mean. Dorothy Mae's voice was extraordinary not because it was trained, but because it was true. Her story reminds us that every ending can be a beginning, every no can become a yes, and every dream you've buried is still alive, waiting for you to find the courage to dig it up and give it wings. The judges stopped laughing at her age the moment they heard her sing. But more importantly, Dorothy Mae stopped limiting herself because of it. And that made all the difference.